Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I want to talk about capitalism, socialism, and communism real quick. And I want to talk about measuring them. This video is intended, at least for now, for my local supporters, my Patreon supporters, and my YouTube channel members. I may make this video available to all YouTube subscribers, people on YouTube later. But I just want to talk about this first and see what the response is to the supporter audience. So really quick, I think I had this conversation on Twitter. I was talking about this. I've had this conversation a few times. And I think there's a way of measuring socialism, capitalism, whatever. And what I do is I look at government spending as a percentage of GDP. If a country spends more as a percentage of GDP, that means they're more socialist. If they spend less as a percentage of GDP, that means they're less socialist. So if you look down this list, this is Wikipedia's list of countries' government spending as percentage of GDP. You get a bunch of, wacky countries up here. But I mean, look at Norway. Norway and Greece are spending, nearly 60%. Belgium and France are spending over 60% of their GDP as government spending. To me, that means your country is 60% socialist, and it can be more than that. It's how much your country spends, and it's how much your government spends as a share of GDP is a sign of how much of the economy is directed by government. And then you also have to add in the regulatory state, which is a huge burden in a lot of places as well. So when you look, you go down, and what's striking to me is you get to the United States, and the United States is 46%. So that means we're roughly half socialist. And then when you count for the fact that there's this massive regulatory state in the United States, and there's all this other stuff going on that's borderline socialist, like class action lawsuits, there's other things where people end up in court, and that's not direct government spending, but it's effectively in some ways government getting involved and taking control. Antitrust, there's a variety of ways in which companies get sued or companies get pressured by government to do things that's not direct government spending, but it's still government controlling the economy. This matters in a sense when people will say, well, what's an example of a country that doesn't spend so much of its GDP? And Singapore is 26%. I think Costa Rica's 22%. You get down low enough and you get very strikingly poor countries. Taiwan is only 19% of GDP. You get to wonder at a certain point how much of these countries, Indonesia, 18%, to what extent are these countries not reporting accurately? Or is it that they just don't have the sufficient government to collect from their population? You've pretty much gotten out of the whack here. But I think, we're 46%, and Taiwan, where was Taiwan? Taiwan is less than 20%. To me, that makes Taiwan a much more capitalist country than the United States. Vietnam is at 22%. Costa Rica is at 23%. I wonder where Panama is on here. Panama is at 28%. I think it's a goal that a country should have of, if you want to be a capitalist country, you should spend a smaller percentage of your GDP. China's at 37%. So China is more capitalist than the United States by this, what I would describe as a reasonably objective measure. Now, is China accurately reporting their government spending? Open question. There's a lot of state-run enterprises in China. That's a little different. We don't really have a lot of state-run enterprises here. We do have like our government schools, and there's government-run golf courses, but I think by and large, most industry is not run by government in the United States. But I just think this is an important mark here, this 46% that you see for the United States. Historically, roughly, I'm going to say before 1910, or for the first 120 or so years of the United States' existence, government spending, and when I say government spending, I'm talking about federal, state, local, school districts, everything combined. Total government spending in the United States before about 1910, for the first 120 years of the country, was less than 5% of GDP. We were a very capitalist country until the 20th century. And, once FDR kicked in and their interpretation of the Commerce Clause kicked in to give the federal government a lot of power, the federal government grew. As the federal government grew, state governments grew. Federal mandates caused, like Medicaid is a big spending burden on a lot of states, and that's driven by federal law and federal policy. So that's just something I'm curious what the audience thinks. What do you think about this way as a way of measuring the extent to which we are socialist versus capitalist? That a country with a very low percentage of GDP devoted to government spending is more capitalist, and a country where a high percentage of GDP is government spending is more socialist. I think this is a fair comparison. Maybe it's not the best way of measuring this, but I don't know of another way of measuring it. So I'd love to hear what you think. Please let me know in the comments if you are a supporter. Supporters can comment below. If you're not a supporter and you want to comment, please become a supporter. And anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Possibly I'm going to publish this on YouTube later for everyone. Thank you.